Greetings, Earthlings. Now, I don't usually discuss the price points of deck techs, but I want to make an exception this time. A lot of people build this guy a lot of different ways, and I used to run a mono white human tribal, so I wanted to kind of merge the two ideas. So today, we're going to talk about my boy Jodah the Unifier. For Wooburg, we got a base 5/5 human wizard with a bananas ability that buffs legendary creatures you control for each legendary creature you control. So even though he's a 5/5, he's always going to be a 6/6. And his last ability is basically Legendary Cascade. Let's do it. Now I'll be real with you guys. The most expensive card in this deck was Jodah himself. I managed to snag him for around $5. Each card in this deck either costs or I managed to buy for under $1, making its total come to about $40.25. We're running a whopping 34 creatures, and all of them, except around 4, are humans, but I'll explain why the deviation. First, we got Tashar, Ancestor's Apostle. Any legendary or historic deck would be dumb to not run this. Then we have the 8th Doctor as a form of pseudo-grave recursion. The creature gets a finality counter, but getting one more use out of a creature versus never seeing it again is more useful than it's given credit for. And the last two are Augmenter Pugilist and Carvanista Loyal Lupari. You will never cast Augmenter Pugilist as its face side. Where its value truly lies is its flip side Echoing Equation, which essentially acts as an Irenicus' Vile Duplication. And Carvanista, well, its adventure side is if we had Heroic Intervention at home, and it's for humans. Now, our ramp package isn't crazy, seeing as most mana rocks cost more than $1 and I'm running no basic lands, so things like Cultivate are pointless. Ruby, Daring Tracker, is a fun little mana dork, and Captain Lannery Storm makes you treasures. I'm probably going to butcher this pronunciation. Gladiolus Amisita? Sure, can get you any land, which is crazy. And the Ring Goes South can just be a complete flood. We also have a fun new one in Blitzball, which is just pure flavor for this build. Hero's Podium basically doubles up Jodah's first ability. It can snatch you a card into your hand. And if you want to pay 8, we have a similar buffing ability stapled to Alistair the Brigadier. The card draw package isn't too shabby either. Mirror of Galadriel will almost always be free as it takes nothing to shit out 5 legendary creatures. Arcade Ganon has a loot effect, and he's also Grave Recursion. Jacob Hawken Inspector can get some stuff out of the way to cast later with his flip side, which pairs really well with Faldor Dreadwolf Herald. Boromir Gondor's Hope can get you a human or artifact to your hand when he enters or attacks. Check out my EDH randomizer video on him. And Faramir, Prince of Athelion, can draw you cards if you're not attacked. Arwen's Gift will almost always be a 3-mana draw to, and the Kenrith's Royal Funeral can not only draw you cards, but give you some cost reduction. And Nasty End is a good way to draw 3 if it's a creature you don't need anymore or it's dying anyway. Ring Sight is a crazy good tutor in a 5-color build like this. And while not actual card draw, Queen Marchesa and Crown of Gondor make you the Monarch. Now this deck is pretty multifaceted, which I'm happy about. I mentioned the 8th Doctor, Tashar, and Arcade Ganon as forms of Grave Recursion, but there's also Yawgmoth's Vile Offering, What Must Be Done, and Confession Dial. A lot of the Doctor Who and Lord of the Ring cards were actually pretty paramount in this build. Bessie, the Doctor's Roadster, is pretty fun if you want to get in for a crazy amount of damage with Jodah buffs, which can synergize pretty well with Dragon Cultists or Biden of Thassa. Seeing as his second ability causes you to cast from exile, means the aforementioned Faldorn is useful, but just for giggles and shits, I'm also running Graham O'Brien. Jeru and Hazaret can also be a good enabler for them as well. And for removal, we got some pretty fun ones. Isildur's Fateful Strike is just rude in some situations. Friendly Rivalry is just band together for legendaries, and with all of them being buffed to the gills, you can kill just about anything. Same with Animus Smite and Ancient Animus. Profane Procession can serve double as removal and potential protection when its flip side can bring the exiled creature back. And Price of Fame is just a tried and true kill spell with Surveil stapled onto it. One that I like its effect, but I kinda hate its name, is You Cannot Pass.
You shall not pass!
You had one job, WotC. One job. And I did touch on cost reduction with Kenrith's Funeral, But there's also a nice one with Honest Rutstein. Reclaim and cost reduction? Sign me up. Another section I wanted to briefly cover is Graveyard Hate. General's Enforcer is not only great protection for your legendary humans, but you can also snipe stuff out of graveyards. And Anaphens of the Foremost just prevents things from hitting the grave altogether. Going back to, I guess, the buff and anthem section, I already covered Alistair and Heroes Podium, but there's also Adriana, Captain of the Guard, which can potentially give +3/+3 to your board if you swing wide. Day of Destiny, which is just a generic anthem, but a good Jodah trigger. Kellen Joins Up can get something out of your hand and is basically Cathar's Crusade for your board, as well as Colonel Autumn. You don't necessarily want to exploit your other legendaries, but if you're making tokens with Faldor and Faramir or Dragon Cultist, then those are free targets. Now let's get to what you actually clicked on this video for. Yes, this is Human Tribal. So we've got a nice package of human benefits with dudes like Theoden, King of Rohan, the aforementioned General's Enforcer, Erkenbrand, Lord of Westfold, and Baragon of the Guard. I shit you not, a lot of the Human Tribal stuff like Adeline and Eowyn run for more than $1, so that was no go. I mentioned earlier how I'm not running any basic lands, and you may be wondering how that's possible while staying in the budget window. Well, my friends, it's because we have ones that are very specific. We've got Crumbling Vestige, Mirrodin's Core, Night Market, Public Thoroughfare, and Pit of Offerings. We're running all of the bounce lands and tri-lands, but one of the best lands in this deck, aside from Secluded Courtyard, is the Great Hall of the Citadel. Being able to filter 1 mana into 2 of any combination of colors is just so strong for this build. Some other humans that may not directly benefit each other but are still super handy are Wrath, Capish, and Ship's Mage, because giving things flash is always terrifying. Halana, Kessig Ranger, because why not have a bite effect stapled onto a creature? Alondo the Seer, because suspending something huge from your hand in the early game can take the pressure away from waiting to cast it, and it triggers all of the cast from exile cards I mentioned. And then because Jodah casts into things that are cheaper than the original spell, I had to find a 0-drop. Can you guess it? Asmoreno Mardigateist and Nicole. But yeah, there's that. As I mentioned earlier, this deck doesn't even touch $50, and it's an absolute blast to play. If there was even a slight possibility of a commander that had Jodah's ability for cheaper, I wouldn't have even run him, to be honest. But I'd been wanting to build this deck for a long time, and I finally got around to it. So yeah, let me know what you think, because I'm happy with this build. Some of the weirder and more obscure cards can really catch people off guard, which always just brings me joy. But yeah, without further ado, go peep the Patreon, join the Discord, check out my music, rap that like, tap that subscribe. Peace.